Welcome to They Tried to Bury Us. My name is Tamer Kattan. I'll be your host. I'm a comedian, a writer, and an actor. I was born in Egypt and moved to America when I was just a kid, so I'm very proud of being an immigrant. And ever since I started doing comedy, I've met more and more immigrants, and I have found more and more amazing stories, and that's what this podcast is all about. Each week, I'm going to have a new guest. They're going to sit down and share with us their American origin stories, and we're going to get to know each other better, and we're going to find out that we're all just the same. So tune in each week, tell every single person you know, and thanks for listening. Welcome back to another episode of They Tried to Bury Us. I'm Tamer Kattan. Can we start over, Paul? Sorry.
Why?
Because I messed up. Ready? I hate to start out on an inconsistent thing. I like the first sentence to at least be good. You know what I mean? Good. I'm glad you got your nose blowout.
You
got it out? Okay, you ready? Good. Perfect. This is the way we start. All right. Hi, welcome back to another episode of They Tried to Bury Us. I'm Tamer Kattan, and with me as always is my co-host,
Mary Basmadjian.
Hi, Mom. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Tamer?
Good. Thank you for driving in the rain.
Oh, no problem.
Oh, my God.
I came all the way from Egypt for you, and today some rain, I can make it. Are you kidding?
You had a 3-hour drive.
Are you kidding? That's nothing. We fly 28 hours to come to America.
28 hours? Is that how long the plane ride took?
From Egypt to America. Yeah.
28 hours?
Of
That
course.
can't be right.
Yes, and we sleep one night over Copenhagen.
We were in Copenhagen, I remember.
Keep going.
Okay, well, my apologies. Thank you for taking like a pilgrim-like flight to bring me to America.
Yes, so some rain, it doesn't stop me.
Well, listen, speaking of American immigrants, being thankful for the parents and relatives that helped us come to America, I'm really excited to introduce you to our next guest. Her name is Mary Basmadjian.
Hi.
Did I pronounce your name properly?
You did. You always pronounce it.
You know
right.
what's good about Egyptians? We're Armenian adjacent.
Yes.
We have many Armenian Armenian friends and Armenian Egyptian friends who are Armenian Egyptian, Syrian Armenian. There's a lot of Armenian people that had spent time in the Middle East or have relatives in the
Alexandria.
Middle East. Alexandria, exactly.
Yeah.
So Mary Basmadjian is one of the funniest comedians I know. She's not good with compliments. I'm telling you right now.
I know. I was like, oh.
You're a great comedian. I think you're so funny. You're not only, and see, there's a lot of comics that are like, oh, I'm a great comedian with the Latino market, or I'm a great comedian with the Armenian. You're just a great comedian, period. And one of the moments where I was most proud of you is when we were both at the Comedy Store in the main room. Not an easy room. It's huge and it's unforgiving, and it's a stage for some of the most famous comedians. And so when comics like you and I go on stage who are a little bit less famous, we get a little bit less love. And when you're a Middle Eastern woman or an Armenian woman and doing comedy in front of an Armenian crowd or Middle Eastern crowd, they're always way harder on women. And Mary took it to them and called them out on it and took control of the stage and was totally like 100% in charge of the main room at the Comedy Store, handling a massive crowd and making them laugh even when they tried not to.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Great.
It's very true. Yeah. I had to force feed you that compliment.
I know. I was like,
she sounds like me. I don't like compliments also.
Yeah, I know. You guys are very similar that way. You guys are such givers and such caretakers.
Yeah.
The two, actually, you remind me a lot of my mom in a lot of ways, the best parts of my mom. And I feel like you're a very strong woman and you take care of a lot of people. And when I heard you talk about your grandmother before, it reminded me of the way that I spoke about my grandma and about my mom. And so one of the things I like about our podcast is people ask us sometimes, you only interview immigrants? And I go, no, I interview people who were impacted by immigrant culture. They could be a first generation immigrant, or they could be someone whose life was impacted by immigrant culture, whether their parents or grandparents were first generation. So really it's anybody who's been part of immigrant culture.
Yeah.
And so you were born here, no?
I was born in Hollywood, born and raised. Yeah.
Hollywood.
Wow.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. That is the second most Armenian place to be born.
I know. I know. And sometimes I do say I feel like I was an immigrant that was born in America.
Yeah.
I feel that way because, I mean, I grew up thinking it was Franklin, not Franklin, and until this day I'll be like, on Vermont, it's Vermont. I was just, that's how I feel.
That's awesome.
She's star already.
You know what's funny is I think I lived on the most Armenian street of all. Like I lived in Little Armenia on Alexandria. So my bedroom, I remember when I moved in, my mom goes, "Oh, I love this apartment because you have a view of a playground. You could hear children playing."
Yes.
You didn't know they were Armenian children. It's so much more intense.
Yeah.
Not only, so it's an elementary school, Armenian school across the street from the Armenian church.
Yeah.
And where the crossing guards carried guns.
Pilibos, Alex Pilibos.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the school I lived in.
Yes.
I stared into the playground where the members of System of a Down met.
I was just going to tell you that's where they went.
So you think I don't know? You think I don't know? I'm practically Armenian.
I know. Yeah.
All right. So I'm so stoked that you're here. And I think when we started speaking, you said you wanted to talk about your grandma on this episode. Great.
Yeah.
I'm really excited because I've heard so much about her in pieces through knowing you through the years and doing comedy together, but I've never heard the whole story. So I'm really happy that you're here. I'm really happy you're going to talk about her. So tell us about your grandmother and why they first came to America and why they leave Armenia.
Thanks. They came to America in 1979, and they came from Armenia because they felt a lot of hatred towards them because they were from Egypt. They repatriated to Armenia, so the locals there, they didn't take too kindly to the Egyptian Armenians that repatriated back.
Wow. Why?
Because they felt like they were coming to feed off their resources or to, there was no food. It was the Soviet time, so there was barely any food or anything. So when a bunch of people just showed up, everybody was just mad. They were pissed. They're like, we hardly have anything. Why are they coming in? They didn't consider them real Armenians. And at that time, I remember my grandma saying when she was a kid, when they first moved to Armenia, you couldn't say anything about the government because they would literally come in the middle of the night and drag you off to Siberia and just, you would never hear from those families again.
Wow.
And she told me till this day, she doesn't sleep at nights because from childhood, she hasn't slept. Like her dad would tell the four sisters and the mom to just be alert and just be prepared for anything at night.
Wow.
It was usually like that. And that's why,
That's like a lifetime of PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely.
And can you imagine not being able to sleep because you're afraid somebody could grab you and take you away?
Yeah. And till this day, she has a very hard time sleeping. She barely sleeps.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to start on the heavy.
No,
but
it's okay.
That's what it is. That's how it was.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this podcast is more about just sharing the truth, like sharing our experiences. So sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's light, sometimes it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So, wow. So it's almost like she was an immigrant in her own country.
Absolutely. Yeah. They didn't accept them. And, there's Armenians everywhere, Syria, Lebanon, Egypt. But when in Egypt, it was being advertised that Armenia is ready to take their people back. And they were trying to encourage the people to move to Armenia. And when they got there, they realized that they were kind of tricked into it. And the government was trying to, I guess, gather their people back again. I don't know. And at that time, Armenia was part of the Soviet Union. Yeah. So I just recently found this out last year before my grandfather passed away, but their last name is not Ali Balyan. It's in fact Halibalyan. And when they moved to Armenia, they had to drop the H because in the Russian alphabet, there is no letter H.
Oh, wow.
So they had to completely change their last name. And I just found that out recently, last year.
Yeah. Wow. And so they went from Halibalyan to Ali Balyan.
Yeah.
So almost even more like Egyptian cartoon.
Yeah. It was,
So for the people that don't know, why did they leave Armenia in the first place for Egypt? Egypt. And
In 1915, their parents took off because of the genocide. The Ottoman Empire was wanting to wipe out the Armenians. And so a bunch of Armenians, they fled. They went to different countries, and a lot of people went to Egypt. Egypt was a country that was accepting refugees. And they, from what Grandma tells me, she loved Egypt. They loved Egypt. And she regrets the day going back to Armenia, of course. And that's why they went to Egypt, because there was a genocide going on, and they were just fleeing the country and from genocide and
the government was almost like trying to bring its people back as a way to start healing. But
I think so. But it wasn't. Armenia was not independent in itself. You know, it was part of the Soviet Union, so there was a lot of influence as well. It wasn't just the Armenian government.
Yeah. So then, when did they decide? Okay, we left Egypt. We tried to come back to Armenia, probably with high hopes and high expectations. And then they went, oh my gosh, they got catfished by a whole country.
Yeah, pretty much.
It is. They got catfished.
Yeah.
So then when did they decide like, hey, maybe America's the next solution?
They lived there for a while. In Armenia, they lived for a while. I remember Grandma telling me, even though there was a lot of people that hated them for coming from Egypt, she did have a lot of friends and coworkers that weren't from Egypt, so she did enjoy that. But my grandfather decided that it was time for a change, and they wanted to get out because at that time things were bad as again, no food, like hardly any food. The jobs weren't that great, and he wanted a better life for my mom and his wife.
Yeah, of course.
Grandma,
I don't know if people can understand what that's like. You know, there's so many times where I go into the supermarkets here and people don't know like what that's like and how easy that is to happen.
Yeah, that's sorry to cut you off. That's exactly what my grandma said. She said when they came to America, one of the good things was walking into the market and seeing a bunch of fruits and vegetables that you didn't see over there.
Yeah, and we take it for granted. We have to be so careful with the people we elect, because I feel like corruption is like this cancer. And when people, like I have a cousin who said, why do they call us the third world? We were here first, right? Good question. And as I've thought about that question over and over in my head, I said, what's the difference between the third world country and the first world country? My definition is the amount of time that countries had corruption. Third world countries were once, Egypt used to be number one. Egypt used to be the most powerful country, had the highest level of education, had the biggest number of inventions, and had one of the 7 wonders of the world. How did we go from that to the bottom?
Yeah.
And I think it's from corruption. And now in the United States, we're flirting with that corruption, and we don't realize where that can lead. It's a scary thing. Like our infrastructure could fall apart pretty easily. I mean, we're playing with
I think it's in the process of it, honestly.
I do too.
Terrifying as it is, it's in the process.
Wow.
And I feel like people from other countries, from countries that have had corruption, can see the signs so easily.
Yeah.
I see stuff, I feel, I'm wonder, I'm in Egypt or America?
Exactly.
I see it happen in Egypt, but I came to America to avoid all that, and I see it in America right now. It's
scary.
I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so they decide, let's come to America. Where did they go?
They came to Hollywood first.
Of course they did.
They did.
That's
But her sister, my grandma's sister, came to America a couple of years before her, and she went to New York, did some work, and then came to Hollywood, got settled down, and then grandma was able to get help from her in that sense. So they had family here to help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's how, I mean, we're in Koreatown now.
Yeah.
And I bet you if we had the very first Korean who moved into this neighborhood, or the second or third, they'd have a very similar story.
Yeah.
Like there was one Korean who moved here first and became like the godfather.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
And it kind of
true.
Yeah.
That's how little Armenia got formed, Koreatown, all those little communities.
Armenian,
Thai town,
Egypt,
exactly. Yeah.
I do kind of wish my grandparents came earlier in my, just so they were here first and I could be a millionaire now. But, so that,
you will make it with your comedy.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Yes. I heard good stuff about you, Mary.
Thank you.
So they moved to Hollywood, and then, so your mom was born here too.
No, she was 12 when they moved here.
Oh, okay. So your mom was already 12.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. And then they get to Hollywood, and then do you have brothers and sisters?
No.
You're an only child like me.
Yeah.
Only children.
Yeah, half sister. I have a half sister. Sorry, I should say that.
Okay.
Half sister. She's great. I love her. But we share a dad.
Okay, cool. All right. So then what was life like when they first got to America?
It was very scary. They didn't know the language. They didn't have a place. Like, they didn't have a job. That was the hardest part for grandma and grandpa, is they didn't know the language very well. And it was hard for them to find a job. And they were staying at relatives' houses. And, you know, there comes a time where the welcome kind of like dries up a little. So you got to get out there and learn the language. And it was difficult, but they made through it. And you know, with the buses, grandma telling me how she used to switch 3 buses to get to the kid's house that she used to babysit.
Wow.
And, you know, they did all that. And now I think back, I'm like, why didn't you just, you know, take a taxi or some Uber or whatever, you know? Like, I wish it was like that for her, but it was taxi.
Yeah. I mean, Mom, you remember
And
those moments when we did that.
Even if you have the taxi, if you have the money, you feel like scared to spend it on taxi. I remember one time I take the bus before I have car, and it take me different way. I ask the driver, no, I'm going Rosmeet. He say, wrong bus. So he dropped me, and I don't have money to take another bus, and I was so scared. So I walk maybe for 2 hours to hit my apartment when I came to America, because I don't speak English. I don't know which second bus I use, and I don't have money. So I keep walking.
It's just terrifying.
Terrified, yeah.
Oh my God.
I remember going on really long walks together. I mean, I had fun with it, but I remember in the sun, like we used to take my dad's car in to get serviced, and then we only had one car.
Yeah.
So then we'd take it to the place to get serviced, and then we'd walk for hours to get back to the mall, and then my dad would later pick up the car and then meet us at the mall. But we were like, I'm like, oh, this is what it's like to be Amish.
Yeah.
We moved to America to be Egyptian Amish people.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know, in the mid-70s or something, they have a strike for the bus. And
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So whatever you want to go, you have to walk or you drive car.
Yeah.
So I start working in some factory in San Gabriel, and I used to walk like 2 hours afternoon. My husband take me in the morning, and afternoon I walk like 2 hours. Or I sit in a station bus bench until my husband finish work and pick me up, and that's take me 2 hours just waiting.
Yeah.
And people walk, he say, don't wait, no bus coming, it is strike. I say, I know, but I don't
I'm
have
waiting for my
choices.
personal bus. Thank you.
So we struggle a lot,
So do you think that first period when they first got here, was that the hardest time for them in America?
I believe, I think it was, because they didn't know the language, and they had a child to take care of, to put them in school, to get money, to just live. And I can't imagine what it was like. I can't even pretend to say I know what it's like, because I've never had to experience something like that. But I can only imagine how terrifying it was.
So what was life like when Mary was born?
It was okay. It was good. Grandpa had a Plymouth.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was good. My grandparents lived about a block away from my parents' apartment.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah, that's how it is in like our Armenian families. We live really close to each other.
Yeah.
So like, you know, to watch the kid or whatever and things like that. It was cool. Mom was working, Dad was working, and my grandparents would watch me as a baby.
That's great. So you got to have them in your life, like as a kid, which is that's so nice, because that's the one thing when you're an immigrant that moves from Egypt. Like I moved away from Egypt, so I lost all my relatives. You know, so it was,
especially
so
the
lucky.
love from grandmother. The best love from the grandparents. So you're lucky enough you have them
my
in your life.
my first tattoo was her name.
Yeah.
I know my mom doesn't like that.
No. I'm very open-minded about everything, and I'm so happy you do that, because that's the love.
I love that you can see that now they came from a place of love. You know?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're in Hollywood. The family lives really close together. So you had the good fortune of having your great grandparents next to you. So that must have.
And my grandma's sister lived above us in the apartment.
Oh, how cool.
So there was,
That's especially for an only child. That's so great.
Yeah.
You had everybody
Really needed that.
Everybody really close and together and stuff. So what about for you? What was your toughest time growing up in America with it? Kind of like I love how you phrased it. You said, I'm an immigrant that was born in America.
Yeah.
What made you feel that way?
Because I felt like, and now that I'm older, I can see this. I was born in a bubble of Armenian immigrants in the Armenian community. We had Oda Bashian jewelry on Hollywood. We had Parsaghian records. So there was there's already this like Armenian setup of community. We only spoke Armenian, and in the house we spoke Armenian. So when I started school, I started elementary. English was a little bit harder for me because I knew another language. But I think the hardest part, it's gonna seem it's kind of out there, but even in my elementary school, my entire class was Armenian. Everybody was Armenian. Yeah, it was by tracks, and it was track C. It was Armenian. I went to Cherimoy Elementary on Franklin, but and we even had like a day where we learned Armenian. They taught us how to read and write Armenian, the helper, whatever. But the hardest part, I have to say, was actually coming from like a not so normal Armenian family. My parents got divorced when I was 5, and I was the only Armenian like in the class with divorced parents. Wow! So that was a little weird, and I did get a lot of like crap for that from kids. And
Give you crap.
They didn't understand. They didn't understand what it was. And like, they found out my dad wasn't at home or whatever. So they were just talking smack about that. I don't know why, but like at that age, like, what do you know about that, But that was, I think, the hardest part.
Because the Armenians don't have higher in the divorce.
Back then, for sure.
Yeah. So maybe for kids to see that, unusual.
Very unusual. Yeah, back then it was really unusual.
They don't understand.
But it's like a second time that like for your family where Armenians are being mean to you.
Yeah, which is why I have a really hard time accepting the love and the support from my community now. It's not hard. I love it and I enjoy it. I'm very grateful. But it's such a twist because I was kind of like picked on as a kid by Armenians, and the same Armenians are kind of like, oh my God, it's Mary. And I'm like,
Now, for all the Armenians that are listening to this, we love you.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
We're on your side 100%. I never fly Turkish Airlines.
Right.
Okay? I'm always voting for the Lakers. When it's the Armenian holiday, I go to the Turkish consulate and I honk my horn too.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're with you. We love you. Just because we're critiquing things doesn't mean we're not on your side. Don't chase me on Franklin or Vermont.
Yeah.
Okay? Okay, bro? Okay, bro?
But you know what the funny thing is, though? I did feel like really alone as a kid having like divorced parents or whatever. But as I got older and now that I talk about certain things, I realized a lot of people were going through something similar.
Of course,
and, it's coming to light, That's all that it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was that your toughest period in elementary school? Kids kind of not understanding the divorce?
Elementary school. And I went to LeConte Middle School for a year. That was pretty tough. Got jumped. And
Why'd you get jumped?
It was my fault. No, because these girls, they were Hispanic. They took my friend's camera and they were making fun of her, and then they gave it back, but I started cussing at them. It was 6th grade, I just discovered all these words. Yeah. And so I started cussing at these girls, and then I flipped them off, and I'm walking away feeling all cool and stuff, and it was PE period, and there was no teachers around. It was the last day of school. Everybody's free for all.
Yeah.
And they kind of like pushed me up against the wall, whatever. I wasn't beat up too bad, but it was enough for my mom to be like, okay, we're taking you to Pasadena now. You're gonna move to Pasadena. And that's when I moved. So I think like throughout elementary and middle school, I was kind of picked on, and
Yeah.
But you stood up for your friend.
I
You
did
stood up.
because
Yeah.
I was hot blooded too. You know, I had to fight. I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to do all that extra stuff, girl. But I had to do that. And then I moved to Pasadena, where I was the only Armenian
Wow.
in the middle school, Washington Middle School, and that's when 9/11 happened.
Oh.
And then I had to explain to people that I was not a terrorist because they didn't know what an Armenian was.
So crazy. I mean, the number of times I've had guests sitting in this chair that you're sitting in now,
Yeah.
and the number of different nationalities who are not even close to being Arabic, where people have said, "You're a terrorist. You're a terrorist." Like
Yeah.
the paranoia. When you attach paranoia to ignorance,
Absolutely.
it's the worst combination of
Yeah.
things.
That's exactly what it is. Ignorance. They didn't know. They don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Unbelievable.
But I did have like an assembly where I did like William Saroyan poem, and I told them what an Armenian is and did all that good stuff, and it kind of helped a little bit. But you know, they were 7th graders, 8th graders. They
Yeah.
didn't really.
Was it just a coincidence that there was that kind of assignment, or did teachers do that on purpose?
No, I requested that because I was
kidding.
the only Armenian in that school, and I didn't like that. I was like, I have to tell them what an Armenian is, because again, in my house, we couldn't speak English. My grandpa would get pissed because I moved to Pasadena to my paternal grandparents' house. I was very lucky to have all 4 of my grandparents in my life.
Yeah.
And you know, it was instilled in me like to be an Armenian is a good thing, and you have to stand up and you have to tell people what an Armenian is and all that stuff. So I wanted to
That's
let them
amazing.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank
That
you.
a little girl goes up to her school and says, "I want to tell people who I am and what I am, and have people understand." Which is kind of what you're doing right now with your comedy,
She's
way.
ambassador for Armenian.
Yeah.
She was ambassador to.
and she still is.
So good
Oh,
for her.
a little
Yeah.
bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Take it, Mary.
Hey, you know what? When I watch your Instagram, which is one of my favorite Instagram accounts, by the way, not only does it make me laugh, but it also keeps me up to date on events happening in Armenia when things are happening in Armenia.
Yeah.
So I very much think you're still an ambassador.
Oh, thank
In
you.
a
I
lot of
appreciate
ways.
it.
A good one, a very good one, actually. Yeah,
Thank
take
you.
that compliment.
I
See?
know, I'm like,
Do you hear the awkwardness?
Yeah.
Do you hear the
Yeah,
awkwardness?
I can see it. Yeah.
She can't take it. She can't take it.
I can see her face. I mean,
She treats compliments the way I treat Brussels sprouts. She's like, "Oh, it's gonna smell later." Like, just take it. It's good for you.
yeah.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
It's the vegetable of words. Compliments. Like, "I don't like it."
Broccoli.
It is. It gets stinky out.
Yeah.
Good for you though.
It is good for you. Well, that's such a it's such a brave thing to do, you know, and it's such a confident, strong thing to do. I'm proud of you for doing that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. My grandparents helped me with that, you know. And I went to Saturday school, Armenian Saturday school. That's why I know how to read and write Armenian now. And
Wow,
That's great.
good
My
for
dad,
you.
yeah.
This is hard language.
yeah, it's the mother tongue. You have to know. You
Yeah.
have to know. That was the
Do you see similarities between, like, when I think of the two cultures that have been through the biggest genocides? One, first of all, for all my Armenian friends and the people I grew up with around Hollywood, I always feel like the Armenian genocide is almost eclipsed by the Jewish genocide, and people don't realize it or don't know or are uninformed. So but when I see these two different cultures, who, like, when you say the word genocide, I think Armenian, I think Jewish right away, and when I look at the kids that I know that are either Armenian or Jewish, the way they were raised is very similar.
interesting.
Like, you have schools and where you maintain your mother tongue, and it's important to be associated with your culture, and it's important to stand up for yourself. It's a very similar response to people trying to erase you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was the reason I was given when I would get mad. Like, why do I have to go to school on Saturdays and nobody else has to do this? And my grandma would always be like, because they try to kill us off and we're not going to let them do that. Like, we have to, you know, and that's part of my joke sometimes when I do the joke about my grandma and mom telling me to have kids. Like, my grandma, when I was a kid, was like, you know, you have to have at least 5 kids to kind of, you know, make up for the genocide. And I'm like, that is not on my shoulders.
responsibility.
That is not on my shoulders.
As if it's not hard enough to come.
I know.
I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I just had to. The joke was there. I had to go for it. Mary set me up. How could I not?
I did not. Don't put this on me. But yeah, I agree with you on that, definitely. And you know what the funny thing is? A lot of people do see it like that. And I like the term you used, eclipsed. I like that a lot. And Hitler actually used the Armenians in one of his speeches where he said, after all, who remembers the Armenians? And it's in history books. He talked about it, and he
as
went
if people
forward.
will forget about the Jews
people
too.
will forget about the Jews too. Exactly.
Wow.
And it's I don't know. It's
well,
crazy.
nobody's forgotten about the Armenians.
Yeah.
At least you guys are doing a good job making sure that they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, if you drive around Hollywood, especially in Little Armenia, there's some really amazing murals that our wounds are still open, and the anniversary 1915.
Yes.
Is that the genocide? Look at it. I'm not Armenian,
Yeah.
but I know it because it's a part of Hollywood. It's a part of LA culture. It's a part of having Armenian friends, and I think it's important. It's really important that you guys do that. And so let me ask you this: you're such a strong woman. Who inspired you? Who made you that way? Your eyes just got big. I hope the YouTube channel got that. You gave me this look.
Oh, I have to say my dad's mother, my other grandmother, who's no longer with us. When I moved to Pasadena, she was like my mom because I lived with her, and she taught me a lot of things that I kind of live by now. And just to believe in what's right, stand up what's right, to continue on your journey of maintaining your culture and, just being nice to everyone. It wasn't just about Armenians for her. It was to be nice to everyone and to help everyone and to, help them cultivate their culture if they have a culture, whatever that it may be. Like she helped me with that a lot.
It's so funny because out of every person I know, you remind me more of my mom than anybody, which I realize is such a funny thing to say to someone who's younger than me.
Hey, it's okay.
But my mom was raised by her grandmother, and I think she would say what you just said in her own words about the way there's things that my mom does today that she gives her grandmother credit for still.
I even this morning talk about my grandmother with my uncle, how great, and I'm doing this because she showed me how to do and all that. And my uncle, he was so proud of me to remember stuff when maybe I was 6 years old. And he said, how can you remember? I said, I never forget the kind things she gave me.
Exactly.
She gave me lots of love. Lots of love. Of course, I never knew my mom, never met her, never knew her. But I grew up with lots of love with the grandmother. I believe grandmothers, they give you double love, double dose of love, especially if my mom passed away. So she gave me extra.
Yeah, to make up for it.
Yes. So I wasn't spoiled, but I grew up with lots of love. And still until now when I'm talking, it hurt a little bit, but I feel she's with me.
Yeah. I listened to the very first episode, by the way. I texted Tamer. It was such a great episode, and it was so nice to hear your story as well. And you're absolutely right. And grandmother's love is different, and mother's love is different, I feel.
Of course, yes.
I feel like in some families, they pass down family heirlooms like watches and necklaces. And I feel like in our family, we pass down advice and wisdom that all came from your grandmother.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, a lot of times if I'm nice to people now, and if I'm the best version of me, if there's a moment in my life where I'm being the best version of me, it goes back to you and your grandma, honestly.
It does. Thank you. But it's just, it's just very important to grow with love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course.
Love, it's great because it changes people's life with everything. If you're surrounded with love, and it makes a big difference in your life.
It makes sense. Listen, like none of us know why we're here. We don't have the answer, but I'll tell you this. Nobody has PTSD from hugging people too much.
Right.
Yeah.
But we get our brains break when we commit violence on other people. When we hurt other people, our brains break.
Yeah.
Literally. But there is no PTSD for loving too much.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen. If anything, that should give us a clue that we should love a little bit more than we hate.
Yeah.
It's easier said than done, I would say, for
agree.
some people, and especially if you're not raised with love, you don't know what that's like, and you can't give that.
Yeah. I think lately too, I think sometimes it scares me when I see a political administration where everything that they say is fear-based or anger-based. Because I feel like the White House is for ethics and beliefs what the runways in Paris are for fashion. I want to wear what she's wearing. And a lot of times in America, because politics is so confusing, like when a menu is so confusing, you ask the waiter, what should I have?
Right.
And I think the president is our waiter sometimes when we say, how should we feel?
I'm not giving him a tip.
I'm not either. I'm not either. And the plate he recommended tastes gross and it tastes inaccurate and it tastes wrong. And it's not the way to live. No one, I don't care what side of the political fence you're on, doesn't feel good right now. It hasn't, to have an administration be this angry for this long doesn't feel good. Yeah. They're not governing. They're still running. Yeah. They're still campaigning and creating divisiveness. I remember divisiveness stopping once somebody won.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Then we'd all be the same. Every president would stand up and say, we're all together now. Now we're all unified. I'm here to work for the people that supported me and to work just as hard for the people that didn't. That didn't happen with this administration.
Nope. No, not at all. And when he tries to do something like he calls it political unity, I'm just like, is this a joke? Like I can't even.
Mary, it's a fake. I mean, it's a fake.
But listen, for all the people that listen that are Republicans, I have no beef with you. None of us have. I don't think anybody hates other Republicans. Like I think the Republicans have been tricked. Like, I don't care who's in office, Democrat, Republican. I think all politicians have a tendency to lie and be corrupt. I'm not afraid of the guy in office. I just don't want to be afraid of my neighbors. There's nothing wrong with people having a difference of an opinion. But I think this guy tricked Republicans as badly as he tricked Democrats. There's no reason for us to hate each other just because we have a different political opinion.
I agree.
Anyways, this is not a political podcast.
I know.
Yeah, this is about Mary.
But we are immigrants.
But
and
yeah, it has a lot to do with it.
Yes,
we're under attack in a very big way.
Important.
Yeah.
So, okay, so that's a perfect segue, right? How about the happiest time in America?
The happiest time was when grandma would hang out with some of her classmates from ESL night classes that she would go to practice her English. They'd go to McDonald's and hang out.
Oh, that's so cute.
And I know. I was like, oh, like, and that was like one of her favorite times. And, taking care of the little Armenian boy that she would take care of. She really enjoyed that. And the funny thing is, that little boy that she would always talk about and everything. I recently posted a TBT picture with my grandma. This guy hit me up that I've been friends with on Facebook for like 4 years. Yeah. Never met the guy, but just he knows comedy or whatever. And he goes, oh my God, is your grandmother's name Hasmik? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, that's my babysitter. Like that was my babysitter.
Way.
Yes. It's a trip. I know, but like she enjoyed babysitting him and like she enjoyed going to work and to be with him.
That's
and
so cool.
The night classes. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember her night classes and like the people like?
No, this was before my time.
Oh, okay.
This is when my mom was
so
a kid.
cute to like picture like going to class. I had an ESL class.
Yeah.
And I'd come back and my mom and I would do the books together. We'd like do the lessons together. And then we had our dose of Sesame Street where we really learned.
Sesame Street was the big issue.
The only problem is Sesame Street taught me how to count like a vampire. I kept laughing after every number. My teacher was like, how many pudding cups would you like? And I'm like, 1.
The bird.
Yeah, that's how my grandma also kept up with her English, was watching lots of TV, lots of soap operas and, Dynasty. And she still watches that stuff, Little House on the Prairie was a huge show and she loved it. She still loves it. Girl, it's on Cozy. You could catch it on Cozy TV. And till this day, she watches it. I got her the DVD set too. I was like, girl,
that's awesome.
Got this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You said the grandmother that was your biggest inspiration just recently passed away?
Not recently. She passed away when I was in 10th grade or 11th grade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not, that's a tough age to lose your big hero in 11th grade.
It was.
Is this your mom, grandmother?
The one I currently live with, yes, is my maternal grandmother, and I take care of her. And she inspired me a lot too, but I feel like the paternal grandmother did things or said things that Armenian women usually didn't. And it really, I was like, yeah. Like, I don't know, she was just different. And I learned a lot from her.
Your face lit up when you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And mine did too, because that's exactly what I think of my mom. She says and does things that normal Egyptian women don't do. And I like that. I think that I would classify both you and I as rule breakers a little bit culturally.
I could say
And
that.
I think we know the source.
Yeah.
Yeah, grandmas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It leave stamps in your personality.
absolutely.
And you too, with your grandmother in Egypt. I mean, she spoiled you. She treats you like a prince.
Yeah.
And nobody can say, and even me, I can tell you what to do. I can.
Yeah.
And I let it go because she loves you, and I can.
And she was
say,
the boss.
Oh no, that's my son. No, she's the one strong woman around.
Yeah.
Yeah, she owns several businesses in Egypt. And
Oh yeah. And
she owned like cafes and restaurants and stuff.
Wow.
And she barely, her Arabic was
she
terrible.
didn't speak any Arabic good.
What did
And
she speak?
She speak Greek and French, but she control all men's work for her, and she write in Greek, and she know how to control the salary and everything.
They kept trying to trick her
Trick her.
in Arabic. So she
Yeah.
says, okay,
No.
you're going to try to trick me in Arabic? Now we're writing everything in Greek.
Yeah.
Like that.
Because in Egypt they take the salary end of the month. So the waiters they come say, "Oh, can I have some now because I can wait." So she used to give some, and end of the month say, "No, I didn't take this," and then no, I have my paper.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
She
People always
was
try to trick,
smart
especially
women.
women.
Yeah.
They'd go out of their way to try to trick women.
Very smart
owners.
business women.
Yeah, she was great.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to be a comedian, and what was that like
Yeah.
in your culture?
It'll be 9 years in April, and I'd always tell stories in school, or like if we were having a family function, I would do I wouldn't make fun of my grandpa, but like I would do what he was doing and like kind of act like him, and people would laugh. And so I noticed there was a reaction, and I was like, oh, okay.
It's so funny to imagine a little girl imitating an old man.
They loved it. They did. But also my dad and his parents were in like sketch comedy type of troupe.
You're kidding.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's in memory. My memory comes in waves, and I just I saw pictures the other day of like me on stage, and my dad. And I was like, wait a minute, oh, that's right. Like sometimes I would be an extra in the sketches, and they did that as well. So I kind of felt like I liked telling stories, and when I would get a reaction from people, I was like, oh, this feels good. And
You know what's funny? My grandmother was an actress.
Yeah.
oh wow,
Yeah. My grandmother was an actress. We had an aunt that was a ballerina. To this day, when we watch the Arabic cable channels, we could see her dancing in the background in some of the movies. Oh, we're going to pause for the car alarm.
That motorcycle.
it's right here.
Stupid Harley Davidson.
Is that anybody's car? The silver one?
Not your car, Paul.
It's probably a racist motorcycle.
You're very sweet. I can see the sweet in your face.
Thank you.
Your eye, your face, all your face.
Thank you so much. I can see it, and your smile is so beautiful and genuine. I love it.
Thank you. I'm so happy I met you today because I watch you sometimes, but in Facebook I used to see you, but now I'm not in Facebook anymore. Very few times.
You're more on Instagram now.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
She's very hip.
No, not really. I learn every day.
So let's go back to I'm gonna ask you that question again, if you don't mind. Sorry.
Which one?
I'm gonna ask you. We'll start right now. Tell me right now. I'll ask it to you. So when did you become a comedian, and what was it like for you within your in your culture?
I started comedy about 9 years ago, and I always liked telling stories, and I liked making people laugh. I liked getting their reaction. At first, when I started doing comedy, this was before Vine or Instagram, so Armenian following wasn't really there, but I was talking about Armenian situations and Armenian things on stage. And I feel like my friends and family that would come really enjoyed it. And even non-Armenians enjoyed it a lot. And I really liked the reaction I was getting talking about things that would happen to me and in my family. And my hashtag funny Armenian girl was kind of an accident, I want to say, because when I uploaded my stand-up on YouTube like 9 years ago, and one of the tags I was like, oh, what am I going to put? So I put funny Armenian girl. And that's when it took off, and I got like crazy hits. About the first video I uploaded got about 40,000 hits or something like that, and this was back then.
Wow.
And there was good reaction. There was people that liked it. They're like, oh my God, this is so funny, I can relate, whatever. And then there was, of course, people that were not so happy about it, and they were like, oh, this is a bad representation of our people, you're putting our people down, or the usual.
This is why I think it's harder for immigrant women or women who have a background in another country, is when we come here to America, there's some people that are more open to becoming American and embracing Western philosophies and Western culture, and there's some people that resist. And I feel like they put an extra harsh eye on women that try to do that, because they look at women as, you should do what you're told, you should just be a caretaker, you should just be a homemaker, you shouldn't be out there telling jokes. So it's almost like, as a comic, you go up with even bigger hurdles than anybody else, having to face these sort of cultural barriers that you have to break on top of being funny.
And I actually noticed this, a show I did up north. I went up there with a couple of other Armenian comics, Moses Shakarian and
Hey,
Michael
Moses.
Passion.
I like to talk about Moses because he had an adult circumcision.
Oh my God.
Listen, I'm sorry, Moses, for bringing this up.
That
but
was, you know what?
Remember when he did that?
Yes,
he had to get circumcised.
Yes, that's actually when I met him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a couple months after that happened, that's when I met him.
You know what
old him?
He's what is he in his 30s? Mid 30s?
Oh, I don't know.
I think he's
late 30s. Let's
late
say.
30s.
What
Here's
is
the funniest.
nationality?
He's Armenian.
Armenian.
Moses Shakarian. Can you get more Armenian? Here's my favorite thing. When he got circumcised, like 2 nights later, he texted me and he goes, "The doctor told me we get up to 8 erections in our sleep," and he had stitches in his wiener, so he'd be asleep and then wake up like, can you imagine having a nice dream about having sex and then you wake up with sharp pains on your wiener? It's like it's brutal. It's torture.
I'm thinking about something else. When he pee, it's very hard when he pee.
Well, yeah, peeing,
Yeah,
but,
it's just
but you get more blood to your wiener when you're having sexual thoughts than when
oh
you're
my
peeing.
God.
We don't know anything about that. We're good Armenians.
I know you guys don't. I like this this image of not knowing anything about wieners.
Don't know. But yeah, and that still happens. And I noticed when we were at that show, there was some material I was doing where it was kind of, the people were not laughing, and it could have just not been funny for them. I'm not gonna like chalk it all up to me being a woman. But later on, after the show, one of the girls that was in the audience came up to me and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you were so funny," and I was like, "Thank you, funny way of showing it." And she's like, "I really wanted to laugh at some of these jokes, but the guy I was with, like, he kept looking over at me to see if I was react." Because in my set, I do talk about, especially up there, I talked about masturbation and smoking weed, and that was not received very well.
Sure.
And, I have to give it up to some of the LA Armenians. They're a little bit more open, I guess. Yeah. But I noticed they were just dying when the guys were up there. And I'm happy for my friends that did well. It's just, I could tell the difference, and I could, feel that was... See, I wish that audience, I was able to call them out on it, but I wasn't as experienced back then as I am now, where I could just literally call them out on it.
But it makes you stronger.
Yeah.
It makes you such a stronger comic. I know it's a bummer, when you leave the stage and you don't get what you think you deserve, but it makes you a stronger comic. Yeah. And it makes you brilliant at auditioning. That's something that we never think about. But guess the worst crowds aren't bad comedy rooms. The worst crowds are auditions. Whoa. And if you get used to people giving you less than you deserve, you become really good at auditioning.
Oh, okay.
See how I twisted that?
Yeah, you did.
I twisted it like a
you
goddamn
did.
croissant.
And now she's not shy.
She's very not shy. That's awesome. I'm super proud of you. I think you're not only really, really funny, I think you talk about real shit, like, and you educate people in a way that's funny and entertaining where you don't even realize it till you get home and go, oh my God. Like this is real stuff she's talking about, and it's so damn funny that you forget it's real till you get home.
Yeah,
and
I try.
Think about it.
I try to do that, and I try to do it with the Armenian mom character that I do on Instagram, the Vartush Tota. But
she's so, you in a wig with those glasses is so funny.
thank you. I use that character to say things that I feel like they wouldn't accept if I said it as myself.
Yeah.
And they're more prone to accepting it when it's coming from her.
Didn't you recently get asked to perform at a private event where you roasted an Armenian man as that character?
Yes.
That is so funny.
I do private events where I go to like parties or functions, whatever, and I go and they give me information. Sometimes if it's a smaller private party, I have the person hiring me send me the pictures and information on their guests, and then I walk in as this woman and I just go ham on them.
And what is the stereotype of what, for people that don't know, what is like the Armenian stereotype that she illustrates?
She walks in with her lime green snakeskin purse from Ross, and the Ross tag is still on it with her little cigarette. It's not lit, and her glasses, and she just goes around talking shit to the people. Like one of the women, she was wearing kind of low, and I was like, commenting on her breastises. And her husband said something. I was like, why are you talking? I'm not talking to you right now. And I put him in his place, but like
so
he was laughing, like it was in a funny way. And I'm just, I love doing that.
Yeah.
I
That's
love
so
putting
great.
them in their place.
Yeah.
You're a Trojan horse, you know, where they go, this is a gift, but inside there's these little soldiers, you know, that tell them, hey, you know, we're all equal, treat women, you know, we're women in America now, we're not women in
Don't
Armenia.
say it out loud. They might be watching.
Then they'll expect the soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like them. More recently, I was able to use that character. There was vandalism on a couple of Armenian schools where they put up Turkish flags, and overnight they put Turkish flags at the Armenian school, and then it was in the news. They had a press conference, and an Armenian woman at the press conference asked a question that went viral because she didn't word it correctly, and all the Armenians were looking at her in a negative way because I don't know she said what constitutes this as a Turkish flag or whatever, but we had to go in and explain it. So Vartush, that character, did a reaction video to her viral video. And I was like, and I got a message from her on Facebook.
Wow.
And I was like, oh shit. But luckily she had a great sense of humor. And she's like, listen, it was misinterpreted. What I meant to say is, how do we for sure know it's Turkish people that did this and not somebody else or whatever? She broke it down and she was a fan. So she's like, I love your work, da-da-da-da. So I was like, you know what? You're a great sport. Why don't I come to your house and do an interview? And so I dressed up as Vartush Tota and I went to her house and I did like a little mini interview and I drew like the Turkish flag and a stick figure. And I was like, flag, person, flag. Like it just, you know, and she was such a great sport.
That's so
and
great.
I was really happy I could do that, especially with that character.
Yeah.
And,
I don't think you realize how much change you're creating.
I hope so.
I think it's part of you not being able to take compliments. You probably compliment yourself even less.
Oh my God.
Very creative.
Yeah, look at you just gave me this look like, what am I, a white blonde girl? You gave me that look. That's what you gave me.
Oh my God.
You should be very proud of yourself,
Yeah.
Mary.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Look at me.
Yeah,
You should be
she-
very
yeah.
proud of yourself.
Yes.
Thank you, Tamer.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Oh,
Good.
now, yeah, it's
Good.
Thank you.
Wow, she actually held eye contact. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Because she closes her eyes when you give her a compliment.
Yeah,
But
she
now
does. She closes her eyes.
At you, yeah.
It's just the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
I know. It's so weird.
She almost gonna cover her face,
I
but she
know.
closed her
Yeah.
eyes.
No, but seriously.
so
But
weird.
very good.
Yeah.
Accept as a compliment.
I will.
Yeah, good.
So for all the people out there, let me ask you one other thing before I tell people how to find you.
Sure.
When you were going through your toughest time,
Mm-hmm.
what advice would you give a younger version of you now? knowing what you know?
Ooh. That's like a very therapeutic question.
Yeah. Important.
Yeah. I would say, just to be kind to yourself, I would just give her a big old hug, tell her that like your bullies are probably going through something at home, or like, just to parents are going to make mistakes, and you have to like, you're going to be strong. Everything's going to be okay. Because at the moment it seems like this is forever, like whatever you're going through, especially as a kid, when you don't understand certain things and when you're raised a certain way. But just to let her know she's going to be good, she's going to do good stuff.
Things get better.
Yeah. And it's creepy because I moved back to Hollywood only blocks away from the elementary school I went to.
Kidding.
Yeah. And I'm kind of actually, coincidentally, I am having a lot of breakthroughs these last couple of weeks of like, oh, I went through this in elementary. I should confront this. Like, yeah. So it's weird because I'm actually, the house I'm with, the apartment I'm in with my grandma is my childhood. Is where I kind of grew up. It's where I went after school when my grandpa picked me up from school. So it's a very nostalgic, cathartic feeling to live in this place, and the same place you lived with when you came home crying from the bullies and stuff.
And now you're the one taking care of them.
Yeah.
Which is such a kind, selfless thing to do.
Very kind.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're very lucky to have them, and they're very lucky to have you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. So now where do people find you being funny?
On Instagram, I'm Mary B626. That's MARY, B as in boy, 626.
The most Armenian area code.
I know. I didn't know it was going to blow up the way it did. I was like, I'm from Pasadena. I'm going to rep that, My AIM screen name was Aphrodite626, okay? Like, and it wasn't even spelled correctly.
That's awesome. Aphrodite with an F? Like she had an afro?
No. No, it was RODITE 626. Someone's gonna find me now. But I loved AIM for some reason, and 626 always stuck with me. So that's why I went with that. I didn't know it was gonna be what it is today.
That's great.
That's what it is. And on Facebook, it's just Mary Basmadjian. It's a regular Facebook. Funny Armenian girl has her own page. And
it's
that's
so
my
funny,
hashtag.
by the way. It's like honest to God, one of my favorite Instagram channels anywhere.
Oh,
and you don't even have to be Armenian to laugh, because your physical comedy is so good and your facial expressions are so great that even when I don't know exactly what you're saying, I'm still laughing.
Oh, thank you. I'm adding subtitles to it. I'm stepping up.
Good. Oh, awesome. Now I'm excited. I'm learning one Armenian bad word at a time.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest. Mom, her grandma, they lived in Shubra when they lived in Egypt, in the same town you lived in.
She loved it. Yes.
Awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Awesome city.
Yeah.
Or,
when I heard your episode, I told my grandma, she's like, that's where I lived. I was like, girl.
That's so cool.
Very close knit.
Yeah.
Very close knit, and people love each other then. Not now, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's different now for sure.
Proud people, very proud people.
Yeah.
So you're lucky to have her.
Thank you.
Because
Thank
they
you.
are loving people.
They are. Thank
All
you.
Shobra.
Thank you.
Everybody in Shubra thinks everybody in Shubra is the best.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
when there's probably one guy named Ahmed that's a real son of a bitch. And there's like hundreds of people going, oh, what about Ahmed? Son of a bitch.
Well, everywhere you find the good and bad, but the majority was very, very good people.
Every place has an
At
Ahmed.
least I come from great apartment. Was loved.
Your building? Was it a great building?
Our apartment. It has my grandfather, my grandmother, my two uncle, my sister, my cousin. His name Sarwat. He lived with us. We grew with lots of love from my grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I got some of it too.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of those guys. I got to meet a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being our guest. You're
Thank you
awesome.
for having me.
Thank you for being here. Follow this woman, not only online, but also doing stand-up comedy. Where do people find your stand-up live gigs?
On my Instagram, I post the dates all the time. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for listening to another episode of They Tried to Bury Us. Please keep listening and giving us great reviews and telling your friends. If you're looking for live stand-up comedy for me, you can find me at tamerkattan.com. I'm at Tamer Kat on Instagram and at Tamer Kattan on Twitter. We now have a YouTube channel. where you can find us. They Tried to Bury Us YouTube channel where you can not only listen to us, now you can see the faces behind the voices and see the reactions behind the stories. And you can also even follow my mom on Instagram.
And you can see Mary today. She's shy. When you give her compliments,
Yeah.
close your eyes.
That's exactly. Close your eyes to the compliment. All right.
Take it, Mary.